my company is not that big, so owner or the one who does all the paperwork is more or less the same. From the history, I'm coming more or less from the area of networking programming and service programming, service from the monolithic architecture, and was also like looking for, well, we need something that is more reliable, something where it's easier to change and to adapt to industrial requirements. And there, MINIX was one of the ideas, and like him, I was looking also in what do we need, what can we change, and how much effort will it be. So from the abstract, that's what's on the webpage already. It's a continuation of what I've told already. When we want to port MINIX to specific hardware, not only limiting myself to x86 or to ARM, but generally to any kind of hardware. Then we have, well, we need something that is really modular so we can reuse a lot. I'm a bit lazy there, I do not want to implement everything again. So I prefer if it's modular and I can reuse as much as is possible. And one of the major issues we faced, I've told already, how do we get MINIX at all booted? How do we get MINIX on anything new we try to test with? And how do we get it booted and why does it fail there? So there's something more generalized on the bare metal and not on the emulation. In the emulation it works all fine, but on the bare metal would help us a lot. And in that areas I'm presenting some ideas, which are ideas which we can think about implementing over the future. But it's also all looking into the MINIX microkernel approach and trying to be as far as possible away from monolithic. So how does MINIX boot? That's the first part. Well, we have there some hardware with a BIOS, where BIOS is not the perfect term. It can also be AFI or UEFI. And at some point in time, this instance starts a bootloader. We all know that. And this bootloader for MINIX then loads our modules, the kernel module, the RAM disk, the init module, and I don't count by now 9 or 10 services which it loads each individually as a module. And when the kernel has initialized all those modules, then the init module starts the RC scripts, which then start the next steps, meaning the devices that it needs and additional services, if there are some, and the system processes and needing for us to reach login from. Just in short, that's how it is currently. So, we want something a little bit more generalized. So the first step is what we have is hardware and BIOS or firmware interaction. The good thing is the firmware supports normally some of the hardware it has connected, for example USB. So if I look on the BIOS, I don't need to worry about is it USB or is it SATA or is it something else. The BIOS part knows about it. The BIOS part supports it and I can read it there. The BIOS, which then initiates the bootloader, is the next step. Then we have our bootloader and the UEFI. It's not, even with compatibility or without compatibility mode, it shares a lot of the bootloader functionality already. So with the new UEFI, we have already half a bootloader in the BIOS, but it's not really completely everything we need. So it's shared in that area. But the bootloader already has to know a little bit about the target OS. If I load with the bootloader something from the network, the bootloader has to understand it from the network. If I load something from a block device, it has to be able to understand that block device as far that I can get my modules from there. And when the bootloader has loaded all those modules, some bootloaders load one module, some bootloaders allow to have multiple modules, then this bootloader starts the kernel or the first module in, let's say, 32-bit. It would be nice if it could automatically also start in the 64-bit mode, and it also provides a little bit about the graphics mode, if there is a graphics device. If there isn't, then it doesn't. So, what is, for us on developing, what does the kernel really need to start? Well, the kernel doesn't need any standard out. So the kernel itself doesn't need to report us anything, because we assume the kernel works, and then it doesn't need to tell us anything. As a developer, we want to see if there's something wrong. So the kernel doesn't need as much as the developer wants. A little bit different than the monolithic kernels is how the MINIX starts up. First of all, the microkernel initializes, gets an handover from the bootloader. In our case, that's the multi-boot data record, developed from, I think, tablet here. And it's getting the data from the bootloader. How many modules do I have? What do I have here? And is there a graphic or something like that? And from there, the kernel can start those individual modules it needs. Because we somehow need virtual memory, we somehow need something which we can call processors, so we need a scheduler and a process manager and all that. And those are modules that are loaded initially. We also get our RAM disk for the init process, and the init process then does our bus validation. If we have a PCI bus, we are happy. If we have a piece of hardware which doesn't have PCI, then we are not so happy, because then booting will not be working as easily. Classic example for that would be the very tiny Raspberry Pi, because there we do not really have PCI, so booting there is a little bit different. Let's phrase it this way. The initialization then happens with the scripts that are in the RAM disk. And we have there classical boot problem, so it's not, that problem is not MINIX specific, that problem is boot specific in general. We would like to have everything present on booting, but we have first to reach that hardware to be able to read from that hardware. So we would like to have a mass storage already, but the mass storage is not yet there, or not yet known how to reach it. So we have to use the RAM disk to get ourselves booted properly. So with that problem, we want to have our devices somehow present at a point of time where we don't have the full hard disk. So we are limited in spaces, kind of. So what do we have as ideas? We want, first of all, in a way, we want to boot a little bit different, modularized. Currently, MINIX loads boots with anything that supports modules. There are other bootloaders which don't support modules. There it wouldn't boot, but that's okay. So currently, anything that supports the multi-boot version 1 bootloader, we can boot with. That's very nice and good for anything that's not UEFI based. There, I've already told, we have some problems. The next idea is it would be nice to have a small separation between the MINIX kernel itself, which is all the time needed after booting, and what we got as data from the bootloader. So currently we have that multi-boot data record, or that information from the bootloader, in an early step pre-init copied, but not analyzed. So we use it as is everywhere in the kernel, or everywhere the kernel needs it. The idea is there, just as we might have in the future different bootloaders to start us up, to have first in the pre-init step, understand what we get from the bootloader. One of that is, oh, we have 10 modules. Another one is, oh, there is our VGA, or there is no VGA. That's information we get from the bootloader. And analyze that, prepare it in an own data structure, and add this MINIX-specific data structure to the kernel for later use. That way the kernel is totally independent from bootloader information, and it's easier to maintain for and adapt to new and other bootloader software. The next idea is, because we have faced quite some issues, join all the core services, 10 or 11, how many there are, in one bigger module and load that one module and have there a small offset table at the beginning. Because currently we load all those modules separately, and iPXE and PXE have, unfortunately, if they are in the firmware, and some appliances have them in the firmware, a limit of 8. So we want to have a little bit more than 8 services loaded at the beginning, but they don't want to load it. So if we put there a wrapper around all our services, put an offset table in front, then we can load them there easier. We have less effort on porting, and we can experiment for more hardware. And the last one is, currently we have, because the run disk has to be as small as possible, so that's reasonable. We have there select drivers where we know those we will need. And it would be nice if we could extend that run disk a bit to have a bit more drivers. So we can, in the run disk already, dynamically guess, oh, okay, it's this kind of hardware, then let's put it this way to get up to reach our real mass storage, our real hard disk that we want to use. So that would be quite some changes on the list. Technically, I assume it's not that much of code change, but it's code change in and not that easy to test area, because it's the kernel itself. And that's, well, not an area that one wants to touch easily. So, same graphic again, we have, if we want to do dynamic, so we have again our BIOS, which again fires off our bootloader, which again loads modules, but in the idea it is, we have our kernel module, we have our core services all in one module with an offset table, and we have our run disk, which is a little bit bigger than. Initialization would be more or less the same. You just have a different offset table for the services. Inside the kernel, the starting can still be the same. Then you have again your RC scripts, which idea of our side also. First of all, fire up a kind of device prober, which should be also a service, and then parameterized locate our system bus, which is currently PCI. Then we detect on the system bus which devices we have, so we don't search for, oh, we want the hard disk there, so we have to find something that is hard disk, but we ask the bus, okay, what do we have, and let's fire up what you have there. This can go recursively, because on PCI you can have your USB host controller, and there you can have connected other stuff. Depends how much data you already put into your run disk to boot up there. After that is done, you fire up your system processes, as example, as an SSH even or a web server, and you reach again your login shell. So that's also a suggestion of some changes to booting. It looks like it might be big changes, but looking at the code, it's not that big changes if we look at it in a modularized way. It has some effects, similar slides we already saw in the first presentation, I guess. If I look at the monolithic kernel, I have, first of all, the supervisor mode, where I have unrestricted access to hardware, unrestricted access to physical memory, and I can execute any CPU instruction I want. On the monolithic kernel, I have also then the user mode, where I do not have that direct access to hardware or memory, because I'm in virtual memory, and the system API controls my access there. Important here is I have in a monolithic kernel very much, I have the kernel, I have all the services, and I have lots of the drivers in that privileged mode, which I have to trust completely. If I look at the microkernel, MINIX especially, I have also a supervisor mode, but only the kernel is in supervisor mode, which is a way smaller area. So only this area I have to blindly trust, and if something goes wrong there, I'm in trouble, yes, but in the other areas, I can help myself at some point in time. So in the user mode, I call it the MINIX core services. That's the standard services that MINIX needs. For example, the virtual memory, the scheduler, process manager, and the long list already presented earlier today. And I also have support services at some point in time. The core services are those which are really essentially needed to start MINIX and to have MINIX running. Virtual memory I need, okay. Processes I need, okay. A TTY I do not need necessarily. I can work without, or the kernel can work without. So those are, for me, support services which are lesser privileged than the core services. I can put there another privilege mode or a layer in between. On the same layer, most of the devices and buses should be located because they only need to get mapped the physical memory which is used by that device driver. Everything else they do not need to know, so they can also be in a rather limited or jail and don't have much access to anything else. And on top, with even less possibilities to do something bad, we have our user land. The system process and the user processes are more or less what in the first presentation today was the user land. So we can have here on a real microkernel, we can have way more layers which allow us way more security, which is something which helps us if we want to have a firewall or something like that. So I also said I wanted to do something with the devices, so I have some ideas there what we can do a little bit different. First of all, really the components, not coming from the core view as well, but from component-oriented programming. If we have our components separated, meaning if we have really the driver as a classic driver which only does the hardware handshake. So that driver talks with the hardware directly and hands upwards the block or the stream or whatever it is, but it doesn't know much about any functionality or protocol on top. That's a separate component. This way we can split it, and well, I didn't know on writing, but let me take from the first slide. I can look at it with the MINIX FS that way. If I have a hardware handshake, really read that block device and understanding what I do with that block on another layer in another process. That way I can split it and I can change the hardware support easily and have not much code change with supporting the same file system again. Also an idea there is if we have layered devices, well, layered devices, let's say bus systems. USB is a nice one. If we have them there, we split the devices with a bus interface, and the bus supports an enumeration if there is an enumeration needed. And all the layered devices communicate via this bus system. And finally, let's add a device manager, something like that we have already, but give that the responsibility over all our devices if we ask for something from the user land. In a way, also referring to the first presentation, this is complementing the sys-control approach that we heard there already. So an example there, we have the device broker, we have our initial bus, we have drivers, for example, the USB host controller or our SATA controller, and we have bus systems which understand the protocol on top. So we have the host controller which only knows about the hardware, and we have a different process which is the USB bus, which understands the USB software protocol. Some are the same. And each and every of those devices registers at the device broker, and this way we can talk via the device broker, request for a device, and or multiple devices, and talk with that from the user end. We can also request, for example, from the device broker, give me 2 network drivers. If I look at this way in processes and not in libraries, then I can even have failovers, meaning one component crashes and I restart that one. So, idea there is to have that as processes. What are our benefits that we have? If we have new hardware, well, we have only a small part, which is the really hardware-dependent layer, to rewrite. And most of the rest we can reuse and we have already tested somewhere else. Because we can reuse that, smaller implementation risks, because only the handshake we need to test again and the rest is already working. And if there are new systems, at some point in time PCI will not be the system bus anymore, it might be PCI Express, it might be USB, it might be something else. It will be less effort to introduce that. But it's also suggestions to change in the future. So what do we expect from that design? We have new drivers with a clean interface. We have bus systems also with clean and shared interfaces, meaning USB has upwards and downwards interfaces, which would be the same as PCI. And for one device type, it should be generic and the same all the time. The device driver itself doesn't really care for the I/O data, so MINIX doesn't know if I do their network traffic or do there something else with it. And virtual drivers do not need to know about the hardware. Is that my worry?
So lots of suggestions for changes, very modular. Pat, there must be some comment on this.
Yeah.
So
I bet.
We have time for suggestions, comments, questions.
Oh, everybody is in dead silence and
we all agree with these suggested changes?
I don't.
It's something that we also have to take care of in the end, is some level of performance. I mean, we got earlier in the link aggregation talk that something got faster by inserting a module somewhere in between. That's not normal, so having a whole lot of layers in between. For example, I've written the AHCI driver for SATA, and I think performance would suffer tremendously if we were to split that up into processes. So that's something that I think sort of limits what we can do at that level. So at some point we have to decide how exactly this will have to be in practice is something that we can definitely talk about. But in some cases we have to make a separation in terms of libraries rather than processes.
In some cases we have to do libraries. In most cases I hope we can do processes. Where do we have our performance loss? Let's phrase it this way. We have currently a large tick for process lifetime. So if we reduce the tick time and make the process switches more often, we can have there some benefits. If we extend the message concept with something like shared memory, I'd extra say like shared memory, then we do not need to create handover memory areas from each process to the next, but we can say, okay, here's your slice, hand it over to the next. That way we will reduce the performance impact. But that's a design issue. And with that approach, of course, we need to change a lot, and we cannot say, okay, keep everything over there and we do in parallel new. We have to, at some point, say, okay, this part we do new, and this part we leave it as is. And when that one is finished, we go for the next part. So it's really a trade-off. That's why I say that suggestions, they would benefit us a lot to have more platforms where we really run on the hardware. Because that way, it's easier and faster to reach new hardware and reach different hardware.
maybe also one comment we saw previously on the link aggregation sample. I would say that it's also not quite representative to compare it, because if you compare it with Linux, and Linux has more or less a very stable symmetric multiprocessing already there. And you tested it on a dual core machine with hyper-threading, I guess, and so there are 4 cores there working. And you did the same test with MINIX, where only 1 core was used at all. And so I just could imagine that if MINIX is being able to use multiprocessing at the same level, in the same area, I would also guess the results are very, very close.
Well, so
I did test the same machine. I overclocked it. So, and Unix results were the same, and Unix results improved. So that's
Yeah, I have just one small comment, basically a difference for the speaker, because there are of course other microkernel multi-server operating systems like Gnome or our own, and we do have separate tasks implementing individual device drivers, and at least we don't focus on performance yet, but Gnome guys focus on performance quite a lot, and they don't see major issues with that. So really, if the IPC mechanism is optimized and the system can effectively use all the CPU cores, it is possible to have really very fine-grained device drivers and fine-grained systems. So I would support that.
out of your wish list, it's a very long wish list.
Yes.
What wish should we, as the MINIX community, prioritize? The MINIX community.
Well, if I can wish, then I want everything, of course. Now, prioritize is we should start with making the booting easier. So, step 1. In MINIX, we have in the kernel, when it starts, we have a pre-init step, and we have the kernel main thread. We should extend the pre-init step to really understand our complete data we get from the bootloader, from the hardware, which we later use in the kernel, and in the pre-init step already put an abstract layer for us in. The pre-init step later is never called anymore, but then have their structure, which is generic and not dependent on the bootloader, and hand that to the kernel.
We should start at the bottom.
It makes it easier because that way you see way faster, okay, our hardware boots. Well, I've told already, and we have also more hardware we tried. Okay, we put in MINIX and we try to boot it and something doesn't work. So we see, okay, the bootloader was working, but we don't see anything from MINIX. And with that approach, we could get a chance to see something from MINIX way faster. So it would help in spreading MINIX on different hardware.
That's particularly valuable in embedded systems that all have different booting schemes.
Yes, they are.
PCs is sort of the same. Embedded systems have their own booting scheme. And once you get that abstracted to something independent of the hardware properties,
There's a final question, and then we'll go.
It's one of those hairy places, the booting time at that stage, and Linux does like uncompressing RAM disk. That's the kind of the place where in pre-init you could even gather the modules together and expand them. It's just a very hairy place to crash your system and adds code to the somewhere.
It's not an area where you want to try to experiment, yes, because it can easily crash, and if you don't do something wrong, then it's not so easy to debug, yes.
Yeah.
That's why we are very cautious to do any changes there. That's why it's this way.
Okay.
Okay, with that, I would like to thank the speaker again.